Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Laurie McConnico, and I am a Senior Program Associate with the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity program at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And I work on our AAAS iUse initiative, which is hosting today's workshop titled Community Colleges Bringing Research Opportunities to Students and Creating Sustainable Pathways. We are excited to hear from our presenters today, Dr. Laurie McConnico and Dr. William LaCourse. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. The presentation is being recorded and the recording will be made available in the coming weeks. We do have the slides posted on our website currently, so you can follow along if you'd like today. The link will be posted in the chat. You'll also receive an email with a link to the recording when it's available later this week. Please note that we will transition into breakout discussion rooms following the presentations. These breakout rooms will not be recorded. We do have closed captioning for this workshop. If you'd like to download or view the full transcript, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And before we turn it over to our presenters, I wanted to provide a little background about the AAAS iUse initiative for those who are new. So the AAAS iUse initiative seeks to support faculty, students, and the greater undergraduate STEM education community by disseminating research and knowledge about STEM teaching, learning, equity, and institutional transformation. We invite you to learn more about the AAAS iUse initiative on our website, and we hope that you will contribute as future contributors to our community. You can also follow us on Twitter at iUse Program and on LinkedIn to stay up to date on our latest events, blogs, or to share what you've learned at today's workshop. So now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter, Dr. Laurie McConnico, who's a biology professor at Cuesta College. So Laurie, over to you.
Perfect. First off, just good afternoon or good morning, depending upon your time zone. I just want to thank you for coming and welcome you. It's a great opportunity to be able to share just a little bit about our pathway to creating research opportunities for community college students here at Cuesta. I'm just one PI on the grant along with Dr. Jason Curtis. And so really I'm here representing a whole team of people who have worked really hard over the last few years, maybe even decades, to increase undergraduate research opportunities. So I can't move forward without first recognizing the National Science Foundation's Improving Undergraduate STEM Education Initiative, which funded this work and certainly is the reason we're here today. So with that, I thought we would get started with, with just a little bit of an overview. Talk a little bit about Cuesta College, just give you some background, the major objectives of the grant that we were awarded, how we got started, some of our programs, early successes and challenges, the benefits of collaboration, just to dovetail a little bit off of my co-speaker today, and a couple of takeaways. And so that's where we're headed today. Cuesta College, you can see a picture of us here off to the right, is a two-year or community college, and we're located on California's Central Coast, about halfway between San Francisco and Los Angeles, 10 minutes from the beach, and also about 10 minutes from our neighboring institution, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, so the four-year university down the street, where many of our students actually transfer to. And we're sort of a smallish college. I say 10,000 students, but it really depends semester to semester. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And we've got a pretty good track record of transferring to four-year universities. We are recognized as a Hispanic serving institution. And certainly at our college, it's been a grassroots effort trying to build and improve research opportunities for our students looking to serve those underrepresented groups, but really everybody who walks through our doors. And I would say just on behalf of my colleagues that we really see the work we're doing as trying to serve the college mission. And I mention it because sometimes there's still pushback, outside of the campus and inside of the campus with what people are trying to do at a two-year college in terms of offering research opportunities. And so you can see a little bit of our mission statement down below, and I won't read it. I'll just say that hopefully we can all agree that engaging with students in undergraduate research has to be some of the most innovative and challenging learning opportunities that would allow for this intellectual, personal, and professional growth. And so that's really what we're trying to move forward here at Cuesta. And so, as we're looking here at our award, we were again financed or funded through the NSF IUSE program. And it was with an institutional and community transformation grant that we got back in 2019. And I will just say, if you're looking at the date range there, it overlaps almost perfectly with the pandemic. And so, trying to move these initiatives forward was certainly not without a few challenges. And so we can do it, right? And we were able to apply for a 1-year extension to help finish some of the goals, given that it was difficult to just accomplish some things in a virtual format that we were all living in for the last few years and into today. So at the outset, we were really looking to create or build more of a culture of undergraduate research here at Cuesta, where historically we just didn't have one. That's not to say that people weren't doing research, right? We certainly had a lot of research opportunities that were happening in a one-on-one capacity or through independent studies programs, but we were really tasked with trying to bring those opportunities out of the shadows, right? And connect all of the different people involved and put it really center stage, right? And show how we're engaging and to bring more opportunities to students. And I would say one of the biggest and most important ways that we were able to do this was through this faculty inquiry group, where we set out to try to expand and institutionalize undergraduate research by bringing together really spearheads, right, in a variety of different STEM areas. And so we call this our faculty innovator group from sort of here out. And then in so doing, really ultimately trying to offer more undergraduate research experiences in a variety of STEM disciplines. And so those are kind of the overarching goals or objectives. And you need a team to do that kind of work. And so none of the things that you're going to hear about today would be possible without our innovator team. And we've definitely had an ebb and flow to participation over the years, but the people that you see on this screen have been instrumental to keeping our group kind of moving in the forward direction. And I have to give a big recognition to Christina Vastine, who is our grant coordinator, because she really is the one who helped to keep us on task during the pandemic. All of us faculty super overextended and trying to make a migration into distance education, some of us without really any experience there. And it was her attention to detail, her institutional knowledge and commitment to the team that really helped us to continue to promote our programs and to help finish building them. And so with that, we sort of got our start. We've got 2 PIs, and one of my biggest jobs has been to be involved in not only building programs, but trying to recruit other faculty. And my co-PI, Jason Curtis, he happens to be the Vice President of Instruction here at Cuesta, but he's also a biologist. And so he's been a really key liaison between faculty innovators and the administration, frequently advocating on behalf of our team, our courses, and our research efforts. And so I think it's just really important, if you're just getting into the game, having somebody in that place who really understands the value of undergraduate research and can help to sort of be a voice for faculty in bigger circles. And then, of course, we've got our faculty innovators. So we have 6 STEM faculty, and they comprise a range of STEM disciplines, so anthropology, biology, math, engineering, and also earth science. And we are a group of tenured and also non-tenured track faculty who are working together in this capacity. And I'll just say again, because it was such a huge part of the program recruiting these folks, is that some people are easy to find, right? You're trying to build a program, they were already doing it. And so you're just, tasked with trying to convince them to see if they could scale, right? Or how they could build their programs a little bit more fully to embrace more students. Others who were looking to get into the game. And so they also ultimately came to us to become participants. And then, we had areas where I think math is an excellent example, faculty who didn't have any ongoing research, right, in those areas. And so then we were able to really help those faculty members explore what it would look like to build an undergraduate research program in their particular discipline. And so, what do? We do a lot of homework, right? A lot of it is trying to think about, things that are happening already, not reinventing the wheel, really exploring what's happening at other colleges. And to get faculty talking, right, beyond their own content areas of specialization. And I know that's not revolutionary, right, but here at Cuesta, we oftentimes know what's happening in our own region, but we don't know what's happening outside of our buildings or what's happening outside of our departments. And so this working group really was an opportunity to learn from one another and to share ideas, best practices, and begin scaling or building our programs. We've helped each other from everything from building curriculum together or navigating college procedures, especially for some of our newer faculty. And you'll notice promotion is on there twice. It really is kind of one of the most important pieces here. You can build all the most fantastic programs in the world, but if students don't know about them, they don't see the value, then they're not going to go very far. And so we've been at everything from faculty lecture nights to booths at county fairs to welcome nights to just trying to advocate within our own classes for our colleagues and certainly for our own programs. And so I think I've spent a lot of time maybe on this slide, but it's because the people are so important, right? You really do need vested and passionate people to do this kind of work. The more interdisciplinary the team can be, the better it can be for our sort of goal, right? Which was to build community at the college. And you really do have to remember that your faculty are your best advocates for your programs. We have the most contact time with our students, and we certainly know what's going on in our own spaces. So that promotion is just paramount. You can entice faculty with lots of opportunities for professional development. I won't go through the list here, but you can imagine certainly having the funding from National Science Foundation has helped to support a number of these endeavors. We've got faculty presenting their own research or students presenting their own research at a series of conferences, some of them mentioned down below. I learned a lot actually at the Community College Undergraduate Research Experience Summit. That was right at the beginning of our grant. And I think one of the most valuable things that came out of that was talking to a student who had been impacted by a STEM seminar they took. And I'm going to circle back to that. But all of these opportunities allowed for increased collaboration, which is key. And we all had a chance to be students again in the SEMER program, so the Center for the Improvement of Mentored Experiences in Research. And that was just a great opportunity to certainly work on team building, but also for us to really learn the value of setting clear expectations when you're developing these programs. And from that, a whole suite of tools were adopted that allowed us to, again, to improve our programs. And so as we were getting started, once you build your team, the next step is really trying to figure out, well, where are your students, right? Where are they meeting you in this process? How interested are they? How much do they know about undergraduate research? And so part of the grant funded opportunities for student surveys and focus groups where we learned a lot about our students. And it was what we thought, right? But they understand that it's important or perceived to be important in their eyes, right, for transfer, that it can help with their academic and career goals, that participation is something they want, right, but that very few of them had had an opportunity to engage in, mostly because at this time it was in a one-on-one capacity, right, so just not scaled for maximum participation. And not unlike what you would see at other colleges or other surveys of this type, the top barriers to participation were really time availability or lack thereof, limited opportunities for students, and then this sort of financial expense that might be incurred, right, through participation. And as we move forward, right, I think one of the ways that you can get at some of those barriers is really to think about embedding research into your courses, because you're going to be able to capture more students with opportunities when that research is embedded. And I think that's one of the things that's really come to the top for our innovator group as we continue to build and explore opportunities. And so I'm about to show you the different opportunities that were generated by our faculty. But before I do that, I just thought that it was important to sort of, come right out and say, well, what do we consider to be research, right, at Cuesta College? And we adopted the Council on Undergraduate Research definition, right? And really, it's a broad and inclusive definition, which was really important to our team, right? Where we're dealing with a mentored investigation or creative inquiry conducted by undergraduates that seeks to make a scholarly or artistic contribution to knowledge. And so again, by using this broad definition, it really does mean that there are lots of ways and lots of different faculty that can help students get these undergraduate research experiences in their first 2 years of college. And so the next sort of suite of slides that I'm going to show are the different opportunities that we've generated, but they represent a series of processes, right, or opportunities. And so first off, we have our course-based undergraduate research experiences, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the CURES. And I highlight that one separately because we actually have a couple courses that are 100% dedicated to research. And so they're not a part of another course. Students do dedicated research projects, work as teams, and these courses run the whole semester or perhaps the whole summer session. And we have other cures, which involve majors and non-majors courses. And then the research is embedded as one component. And those are the ones, again, where you're able to capture probably the most students and students who didn't even know it was going to be good for them, right? So they didn't mean to get that experience, but they got it anyway as they were completing their kind of core courses. We also were able to develop a study abroad course, which allows for independent mentored research. And then the traditional independent study that we've had for a long time in anthropology and in biology continue to sort of meet those students one-on-one or in small groups. And a really nice success story coming out of an academic club in engineering. And so there's lots of different ways to engage with your students in undergraduate research. And these are the approaches that we've taken to try to institutionalize and to, again, interact with as many students as possible. And so I also have to just say there's no way I can do any of my faculty innovators justice in the next handful of minutes of trying to share with you their slides. And so I do want to encourage you, if you're interested in knowing more about what's happening in anthropology, math, engineering, earth sciences, biology, then please reach out to the faculty. I've posted their contact information on each of the slides, and I know they'd be happy to share with you their journeys in developing these courses and certainly the different techniques that they're employing. So please don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, I'm going to get started really first up in alphabetical order in case my innovators are watching. That's how we approach this. So we've got anthropology first, and we're lucky because Professor Lisa Mifsud is here today, and she's going to be in one of the breakout sections. So you're welcome to join her and learn more about anthropology as well as to just discuss bigger themes. But she's been engaged in undergraduate research with students for over a decade at Cuesta College, and many of them get their start in her kind of core anthropology course. They'll take a series of classes with her, learn those key skills. And then the ones that are super interested in pursuing things further will write proposals, right? Oftentimes getting very creative about using roadkill or having a chance to explore local midden sites. They write those proposals in an effort to build their own research really questions, have a chance to implement the scientific method, and then ultimately go to conferences. And so many of our students have continued on to PhD and master's programs already. So we know that these things work. And hers is just a great example of how far your students can take it if they get that early start. In biology, we had a long history of undergraduate research, or at least independent studies and immersive learning and field programs. And so my colleague Silvio Favoretto and myself were able to get a lot of departmental support to launch this course called the Environmental and Applied Microbiology. And it actually started out as just an exploratory course where students learned basic techniques, and there wasn't an overarching objective except to give them those skills. But when we were trying to get funded for this grant, we started thinking about it being really an excellent opportunity to turn it into a research course. And so we started teaching it that way in 2018 and developed a long-term project really trying to address an issue in the Morro Bay estuary, which is our local estuary. We had declines in eelgrass that people thought could be attributed to a pathogenic slime mold. And so it was actually our students that were the first to detect that slime mold in the estuary. And now we're building part of a long-term data set, and it's allowed for students to become engaged in independent research, publications in local blogs, but also the work is on track to be in a peer-reviewed journal. And so all of these students have had a chance to really become engaged in research that is meaningful to the community. My same colleague and myself, Silvio Favaretto, also took the grant and sort of ran with it as an opportunity to generate affordable study abroad experiences. And in this course, the students not only take marine science, but they each are tasked with designing their own projects. And so they get a chance to work from observation in the field all the way through presentation of a results. And, you know, again, just like all of my innovators, there's no time to go through it all, but there's one project that's highlighted on the right of your screen where our students were looking at abundance and diversity of shells in front of the field station. And our one student, Hunter Larson, was just an incredible artist. And so all of the pictures that you see there are ones that he has sketched and then identified with his partner in the field. And so just a small example of some work that can come out of a 2-week immersive learning experience. In engineering, we had a really great start here with Jeff Jones, was our principal engineer. He's recently retired, and so I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. But you know, when you have a retirement, it can impact your program, right? And so he built a really great program with Eltari El Gandor in engineering, where students were able to address design challenges through the engineering course. And, you know, during the pandemic, I think you really have to give these guys credit because they developed kits that they sent home with the students so that then they could work on their own original designs and still get that full experience while working in a DE format. We'll have to see what happens with that program now that we've had a retirement, but Eltari has been really great at keeping things moving through the SAMPE Engineering Club. Eltari has a full professorship at Cal Poly, but also teaches here at Cuesta. And so he's been able to help students gain access to the technology at Cal Poly. It's where those collaborations come in and are so important. These students are competing with national and international students at design challenges and interacting in conferences. And so again, just a really great way to begin to build that identity as a STEM student. You can see one of the students at the right here posing with his bridge build for the NCUR conference this past spring. I'm so happy. We here in GIS, we had programs that were developed by Frida Schroeder. She is a non-tenure track faculty member who actually just got a job at another neighboring college. And so she's a big loss for us at Cuesta College because she really worked hard to build this GIS program, built 5 new courses, each of them with an embedded research component. And students coming out of this certificate program have really marketable skills. GIS is such a valuable skill. And so you're looking at some of the examples of maps that students have built, some of them interactive, learning all kinds of applications, and really able to get a place in the job market right away. And so it's just an excellent example of how 2 grants can work synergistically to bring these opportunities to students. And hopefully we will find someone to take on the amazing work that she started here as, again, a non-tenure track faculty member. And then sort of last, but only because it's alphabetical order, we have our math initiatives. And I think this one deserves an extra bout of credit because in math, we didn't have any research components that I could find, right? And so it was really a place where Guillermo Alvarez Pardo was tasked with trying to figure out how can we engage with students in math research? And so he built this course along with a colleague, Robert Schwenicke, called the Math 290 Introduction to Research, where students are working collaboratively to solve problems that have been posted in the College Mathematics Journal. You can see down at the lower right of the screen, there's just like a little highlight which recognizes one of Guillermo's students, Harvey Perkins, who had solved one of the problems that was posted in this journal, again, alongside of other international and national students working at four-year universities or perhaps as professional mathematicians. And so just shows the caliber of work that can be done by our students. Students in this class also get to participate in the preparation for industrial careers. And so Guillermo, again, working those collaborations to be able to work on real life industrial problems with the SLO City Department of Public Works. And I think together this course is really giving students an opportunity to see the careers that are possible in mathematics that extend beyond teaching in the classroom. And so again, to Guillermo's credit, really building from the ground up. And so these are just some of the opportunities, and again, each of the different disciplines where we've had success. And now I wanted to share with you the STEM seminar. I mentioned that I'd been to that summit and the student had my ear talking about a STEM seminar he had taken at Bellevue College up in Washington. We actually reached out to Bellevue after that, had them come and talk about the dynamics of their STEM seminar. And in the course of 2 years, along again with feedback from everyone in this innovator group, we were able to build a STEM seminar collaboratively, right? One that represents opportunities for students to get career exploration, hear from experts in the field, develop those professional skills to be successful as a STEM student and professional, and then ultimately to be part of the community, right? We have students working in STEM across campus, and even before the pandemic, not really an identity for them, right? As a STEM student, not really something to capture them when they first come in. And so now we really see this STEM seminar hopefully as something that can become the cornerstone, right? Where students come to Cuesta College, they start in the STEM seminar, they learn about opportunities. I should mention this course is taught collaboratively by 2 different STEM faculty members from the innovator group, and the goal is to keep it rotating through so that there's always new life breathed in, but then also just so many opportunities for students to see that faculty work collaboratively, science is collaborative, and that we're really trying to model what we hope they will find in our programs. And then of course, I can't go without saying that it's another opportunity to really promote the great opportunities that are available on campus. And then you can see here, we've had a number of early successes. I won't read through them all, but we've had a number of students take courses, study abroad, chances again to be involved in these collaborative programs, and in some cases even publication. And so as we're looking here, none of this work is without challenges. I think the biggest one sometimes is just overcoming this idea that maybe community college isn't a place for research. But I think it's super important for people who are engaged in STEM to think about when they got their first undergraduate research experience. And for myself and my colleagues, as we're sharing, it's in those first 2 years of college when you're getting those first experiences that will shape really the direction that you take. And so in that way, your students are really at a disadvantage if they don't have those opportunities before they transfer. I mentioned a little bit about some hurdles with recruiting enough faculty. Students want these opportunities. If I could convince every STEM faculty on campus to embed research, I think that would be the overarching goal, right? And then your students would really have a tremendous capacity for exploration in those fields. But it's hard to recruit faculty, and your programs are vulnerable when you have retirees or you have really excellent non-tenure track faculty that get a full-time position elsewhere. You can see a list of other obstacles. And I think, again, if I just skip to the bottom of the list for the sake of time, you know, our students are busy. They balance whole families, they feed whole families, they're working and they're trying to be in school. And so the more that you can integrate these research opportunities into courses they already need to take, the more that you can try to kind of break down some of those barriers for them. Collaborations have been huge for us. This isn't even all of the collaborators, just the ones I got permission from in time to post on the front of the slide here, but they lead to more projects, they lead to more opportunities for students. They can certainly give you access to more facilities. And as a part of the community college mission, right, it's a great way to engage with your community. It isn't just lip service, it really is a real opportunity to move your projects forward with your students in mind and to get that support to make it happen. And so in my last little minute here, I will just say that, you know, everybody benefits. It's not just students that benefit. Certainly we know that students are going to get those incredibly important critical thinking skills, right? A chance to be involved in research that may again shape their entire trajectory in school and in life. And that's great for your institution too, right? Because your institution gets to promote those programs, gets to attract more students. And you know, in talking with my colleagues, it's always probably going to be an uphill battle, right? There's never going to be enough money. There's never going to be enough time. There's never going to be enough opportunities. But everything you can sort of push against in order to build them is definitely worth the effort, because the students benefit. So lots of people to thank. And so I'll just quickly show it. And just say that, again, this work is a huge collaborative effort, both in funding and in people. And if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to chat. And again, to my colleagues for all of their fine work. And a big, big thanks to all the students who participate in the research.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laurie, for speaking about your work on research at your university, at your college. So I noticed a lot of comments and questions in the chat, which is great. We will be transitioning into breakout rooms after the next presentation, and so I encourage you to stick around if you can for that. But now I'll turn it over to Dr. William LaCourse, who is a chemistry professor and the Dean of the College of Natural Mathematical Sciences at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So Bill, over to you.
Hopefully everybody's seeing the slide on the screen. It's only been a couple of years, but still there's technical difficulties that come up with doing technology. But definitely grateful for my host, AAAS, for being here. And I really loved Laurie's talk there. It's going to bring up a lot of the points that I'm going to be talking with. And it's basically some background and history about what we've been through at UMBC, looking at how do you make students successful, especially those students that transfer from community colleges and technical colleges and two-year institutions to UMBC. Definitely grateful for the NSF awarding of this funding to UMBC and the other participants in the IUS award. So I'm going to start with the fact that this talk is really all about transitions, right? And Yogi Berra said it pretty well. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And I got to tell you, and I'll show you a slide in a few minutes, that is exactly how I felt going through all the different transitions in my life from one educational institution to another. And the purpose of the beginning of that is just to get a feeling for us about always keep in mind the student's point of view. And then I'll go through a number of different proposals, some that we've had in the past, and where the challenges came up and how how we tried to meet them or didn't meet them, going from the Nexus grant to the T-STEM grant. And then finally, we'll take the main point of maybe we put together everything that we learned in the past two for doing this IUS grads. And it's really the word I think that came out in the previous talk was community. We're really trying to build a community between two-year and four-year institutions to make it more transparent for the student. And if there's difficulties to be shared, it should be on the part of the institutions. And the Holy Grail, and I saw questions coming up in the chat there, the Holy Grail is really how do you sustain this after you keep it going? So I thought I'd start off with just looking at my experience. Not that I like to talk about myself, but it really shows how your background has influences what you do. Fall school, little school in the corner. They said it, someone said about everything you learn in life, you learn in kindergarten. We had engaged learning back then. We sat at a table in group work, right? We shared things. We had reflection time. They called it a nap, but you'd lie on your blanket on the floor and you'd think about it. And we went through all K through 5, this wonderful corner school, and then they send me off to Buckingham School. And it's big. And there's kids, where'd they all come from? No one's told me they were going to split up the classrooms and have different teachers with different personalities. And that was great for a year. And when I finally learned that, they threw me into an even bigger school. And I'm a baby boomer. They ran out of schools at the time, it felt like. And so they took away everything co-curricular, everything that my brothers and sisters talked about was fun, didn't happen anymore. And I had to go half days and switch in the other half of the year to the other half of the day. And then you go into high school, first generation, don't know what's going on. This word advising, I don't think they heard of it. No one told me, advised me of where to go to college, how to go to college, what SAT, that you could actually study for it and take it again. I did go to a two-year institution, Thames Valley State Technical College, and it was wonderful, right? Books, tuition fees, they watched out for you, $400 per semester. It was really affordable. Does it set me up to go to the University of Connecticut? 30,000 students, 4,000 acres. And when you don't have any money and the holes in your shoe, you quit. And then I go to Connecticut College, and I have 90 credits now. And they say, well, we're going to throw away 30 because they don't align. And then I say, well, I go to the Board of State Academic Awards, whoever gives the name of Connecticut on their degrees, you do these 120 credits in these courses, you get a degree. I don't know why everybody else is making it so hard. And here we have something that's not even an institution that makes it work. Northeastern, go to graduate school, choosing a mentor is important. $1,200 a month apartment, $7,000 stipends, it's difficult. You go to Iowa State University, I never was out in the Midwest, flat, open, friendly. I knew I wasn't in Kansas anymore because I really just came from Boston. And then UMBC, I'm grateful to be here, and that what I learned from everything that I had in the past is that I had to do something to make a difference and work with those that wanted to make change as we went through. And so everything has a beginning, right? And the thing was to start with is that there are a lot of reports out there showing that we had to change the way we were learning, the way we were doing things, right? We're a reflection of everything we learned in the past. And just because we did it that way doesn't mean we're not going to continue on with what we want to the same way in the future. And people are showing that maybe we had to change the way we teach some. Maybe we had to come back and look at this from competencies, because when you go to med school, they want people that are competent. When you take your driver's license, you should be competent, right? You should be able to drive on the road. So we have to teach in a way that brings that to the forefront. And we know that we needed more physicians. We know that we needed to change for this engaged learning. And the previous talk was a super example of how research and getting into research really does that applied work really well. And then from a national point of view, we just need more students of every color, of every dimension to add to the scientific, to ask their questions to be answered. And so the question is, how do you go about this? Well, the first grant that we went to was this Nexus grant. It's a Howard Hughes Medical Institute grant from 2011, 2015. And it's really about how do you make these validated competency-based modules. And those modules will come up again when we talk about the iUse project. And there's a paper, and it's on the slide there if you want to look at it. And this kind of tells you a process paper of how everything we went through. And it's called the Nexus National Experience. And the experiment, it turns out, was maybe less on the students and more on us as the institutions that were involved. And so what we had is 4 institutions. They've got to come together. These are 4-year institutions: Purdue, UMBC, College Park, UMaryland College Park, and the University of Miami. And the idea was to take math, because for some reason, math is a challenge to a lot of people. And can we imbibe that into all the different courses, bring them to the forefront, have them practice those skills, and develop competencies in the process? Well, as you can imagine, the individual institutions each found that they had problems getting this buy-in. There's just not a lot of people. And when you come to TA's lines, well, if you try to reduce things or maybe switch things around a little bit, you might lose a TA line. That makes it difficult. Class sizes get bigger, 450, so you might have to change your pedagogy and how you do it. How do you assess things? And that comes up in a later one, is that, maybe you have to do multiple choice and not better questions. Overcoming resistance, because that's not the way we've done it before. Why should we do it now? The faculty commitment, they're overworked and overtaxed a lot of times, especially those that are dedicated. And then you get implementation, constrained, limited class times. But those were institutional ones. But the big problem with what took place with these 4 institutions trying to come together is that it started with 4 individual projects that an outside entity said, let's bring them together, have you work together on a joint proposal. All this, we were never together, right? We were never a community. We never were really one. We worked together. We produced things. We produced the paper from it. But there was no incentive to maintain and sustain it. What tied us together? What happened at one institution didn't actually affect the other. And that turns out to be a significant problem. So one of the things in your own institution, we did some work. In fact, we have one of the authors on the talk here that's going to help in the breakout room, Dr. Hoffman. Showed that these modules that were created look pretty good. They get some results. They look like they're making difference, but when you really came down to it, the only significant demographic variable that affected the quantitative learning was whether or not they transferred into UMBC or not. And that was both for the quantitative numeracy and the interpreting of data sets. And so we have a problem here. It's like you can do these modules, you can try them out. People like, the students like them, but we see they're not really helping the students that come in here that are not direct entry. So that brought us to our next grant. And we had to learn some new lessons here as we went through this. And that's about how do you build a collaboration? How do you get universities and colleges and institutions to work together? And so we took our main feeder institutions, sending institutions that send students to UMBC, and which we are very grateful for. I'm a 2-year instant grad. It is a great pathway. Every time I hear a talk like Laurie's, I'm jealous that it didn't happen now, back then, like it's happening now. And this was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the model that we used is about misalignment of the institutions, right? The worst thing that could happen is to blame the students, the deficit, or why they go to one student. Well, maybe they went there because it's the only choice they had. It's the only pathway that was available to them. But the institutions themselves, they're all about K through 12 preparing the background for it. They come in with what they need. 2-year institutions help them complete their degrees of transfer. Then they have to make decisions, programmatic, the alignment, all the curriculum has to align. They're not going to throw out those 30 credits just because someone said they didn't, someone didn't tell them what they should be taking out. And if it's successful, it blooms, right? But if it's not, if we don't align our courses, if we don't align our advising, if we don't align our advice, orientation. A lot of students, when they come here, they think, oh, I already had orientation. I was at the 2-year institution, but it might be different. So these misalignments are not the students' faults. They're our faults, right? And we have to look at ourselves. And so how can 2-year and 4 institutions partner together, right? And to get a sustained success for transfer students, right? And I know most institutions, we have articulation agreements, right? There's course alignments that take place occasionally. There's a web page that tells you what there's pathways, but they weren't working, right? It's more than these alignment. Okay, what's the key, again, is faculty from the different institutions coming together, talking with another, and everything that happens one year can change into the next year, right? Because things change over time, different training, different pedagogies come into play. So we have to keep on top of it. And of course, to make it work, you need the institution to be committed to it, right? So we had presidential commitments and leadership and management was involved. This was a big project, working teams, all kinds of aspects of the university and the institutions. And then the key one, which I'll talk a bit about later, is this data sharing that needs to take place, right? We keep our data to ourselves. We hoard our data. We're not allowed to share it a lot of times, but you are, but there's a lot of work to get that point. And when you do, it's the data that will keep us honest about what's working and what's not. So if we look at this institutional alignment, you have all the things that are taking place at the 2-year institutions and all the things that are taking place at the 4 institutions. But in that process, we have partnerships, we have alignment of courses, career and academics, advisement, transfer seminars, what are the pathways, right? We needed to not have 2 institutions, right? But we need to put a tent over both of them. We had to make it more opaque. The transfer student needs to have what it needs at each institution and seamlessly move on to the next. A lot of people, the provost here used to talk about, it felt like we were taking students from one institution and throwing it over the wall, and we're hoping that the institution on the other side catches them, right? Well, you don't always catch that person, and that's the problem. And so one of the things we worked on in the curricular alignment, which is what I was charged to work with, is really about understanding each other, right? Because it's really easy for people to make up things or feel about someone you don't know. And the idea is, first we need to understand, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, that we have different missions. There's different student profiles. The class sizes are definitely different. Things like expectations. If you go to one institution and you get lots of partial credit and you go to another one and there is no partial credit, that wrenches the student. right? They weren't expecting that. The assessment processes, multiple choice versus not, no TAs, the teachers are doing it versus lots of TAs working these classes. You can go down the whole list, and there's many reasons why a transfer student should do extremely well, right? The smaller class sizes, the individualized attention that takes place, the better testing that can take place. There shouldn't be the deficit, these changes that take place. And so the goal with this particular project, the T-STEM project, was all about bringing the institutions together, facilitate discussions. And in this discussion process, it's not to tell anybody what to do, right? In alignment. And we had guiding principles, right? What is our common goal? We're not different. We actually have one goal. That student will be at your institution. Your students are my students, and my students are your students. And it's like Schrodinger's cat. We just don't know it until we open the box, right? And we share responsibilities and duties. We each have responsibilities to those students. We have duties that we have to perform to make that student successful. We have dedicated work teams, and we needed to establish, at least at our institutions, a common language, right? We had different course numbers, the way the content might have been running, and bring it in just to make sure we're talking on the same level and about the same issues in the same sequencing. Work teams, absence of institutional and individual prejudice. We're people. We have prejudice. It's probably something that helps us survive in some way, but it works against us at other times. In fact, later in this report, we found out that some of the PIs at the other institutions actually selected people that didn't really trust UMBC, right? We wanted to make sure we had experts in their respected fields, dedicated teachers, and a commitment to the process. And the idea in the end is there is no blame here. We have an issue, we have a problem, we have a misalignment. Hopefully when you go and get your car aligned, your front wheels, you don't know why it happened. It's just misaligned, fix it. This doesn't matter what the reason is, what pothole it was, unless it's in front of your house and you have to get it fixed all the time. Maybe that's the issue, but not in this case, right? No one's to blame. And we would start off by sharing data. And there's no good data or bad data. The data is just keeping you honest in the whole process. And we had a problem. It doesn't say it's one institution or another. It's our problem, right? So we used data. We shared data to show that there's an issue here. It's an issue that belongs to all of us. And we needed to build trust among each other. We're here to work together. Sharing data, we're not pointing fingers. And we're not going to tell any institution what to, if they don't want to change, if they don't want to add things, we're not going to make people do it. They have to want to do it to get to that particular, to make a change. And what we found is as we took together all the chemistry faculty and eventually the math, and we did this now with biology and we started with physics, is that when we did chemistry, what we found out is that there are more similarities than differences in almost every case. The topics were grouped together. And how many chapters, if you had an imaginary 20 chapter textbook, the way they did the first 10 or so versus the second half, might have been different. So you really want to take your whole sequence at one institution. We found that most of the community colleges hit some nuclear chemistry. We didn't. Guess what? The students really loved it and it excited them. So maybe we need to change there. And then math calculator uses. One institution uses where you only use the simple calculator, other ones use those big expensive ones. Pedagogies, very similar, class size differences, all of the same. And then assessment, that's where we really saw differences that probably affected the students the most. Free response, partial credit at our partner institutions where we didn't have any of those. And multiple choice questions, because our freshman chemistry class 101 is 900 students. And so you have to grade fast, quickly, and do it the best. It's not the best way to test, but it's what we had. And then extra credit, we never give extra credit here. And these the changes that took place was complete your sequence at whatever institution you're at. We put some nuclear chemistry in there to get that inspiration going. Multiple choice chemistry exam questions in community colleges, just a taste of them, because they would come here and take them and thought we were just trying to trick them. No, they're just multiple choice questions. It wasn't intended to trick you. It's not that we wrote the greatest questions. We hope to improve that. And then we tried to establish a consortium to people who would continue meeting. And there's a couple papers listed there. But the overall challenges continued. one, the faculty commitment is difficult, but they do it because there's a greater good that we can accomplish with that. Limited adoption within the institution. So, and what we did and all these changes, some stuck, but many of the more important ones kind of drift away as faculty change. You use a lot of adjuncts maybe in the process of it. Things end up, program change, and unless you keep on top of it, it doesn't distribute, because we didn't really have the secret sauce there. The secret sauce is faculty working together and continuing to work. Within an institution, it sometimes is difficult, but between institutions, it's more difficult. And so the key was we didn't put into this particular grant any mechanism to maintain or sustain the collaborations. And so that brings us to the NSF IUSE grant, all right? And we have, these institutions are involved in it. They all have PIs. They all have their subsection of their portion of the grant that they're responsible for. And the idea was here to continue to work together, many of them the same as before. But now the key, what we thought, or what we're testing, we'll show you that question in a moment, is we need to build communities, right? Communities are what make things successful, right? I try to tell students, and we try to tell students here, that if you want to be successful, right, you have to have a community to support you. So curricular alignment is what we did before, aligning the things. So we worked in the biology equipment and what they did. We had work groups where faculty came together and they worked together to develop modules in the process of, and there's faculty development, which is what we had hoped to be our sustainable program, right? Advisory board keeps us, you know, you're doing this, doing it right, analyst symposium to bring together, and lots of assessment information. Each of them had their purpose: curricular alignment, awareness, common languages, module development, get our faculty working together, and then faculty development would be sustainability, because each of them have a resource. They each have an expertise. Bring that together. We can share resources and save time, effort. And so the big question here is creating this interinstitutional model through communities. Will it promote the change we want? And will it help us expand what we want to accomplish? Will things that we do be adopted more permanently? And then we had other questions about thresholds and the amount of information. We went back to the data set that we had before. You know, these competencies, these are important. How do we make them happen? And so the faculty have been getting together and they've been doing a fabulous job of developing these modules which are out there, that are developed by faculty, vetted in the process, assessment questions are added in there. And in the process, we map out all the competencies in there. And the ones that are simpler at the one end, as you go through the sequence, they get more difficult. And you try to make sure you hit those competencies more than once, and you make sure you cover the ones you do over the process of it. But the key to all this is all this data we're going to collect. And what we started in the previous grant that we talked to TSFN, it took us 5 years to lock down a sharing agreement between these institutions and ourselves, so that we could share data not only on the past project, but on this one with modifications to the agreement that all institutions did. And there's a ton of assessments that we do, global at the beginning and at the end, institutional data, validated instruments about how they like it, students like it and don't, how it's working with the faculty, internal reviews for formative actions, and external for summative to see if we're achieving our goals. And what do the students say? They like the engaged learning. They like the active learning. All right, that's the first statement. The second one, the opportunity to analyze data, getting real data. That's exactly what the previous talk was all about. The reality of something, the relevance of it, right? And to incorporate what these modules into the work they do, to bring it home to them that these are important to what they want to accomplish. And if you use this instrument, you know, what are they least effective? Yeah, there's a lot of things we can use this data to make it better in the process, but overwhelmingly, the students like these modules that we're developing to bring these key concepts and key skills across to them. The more important is what happened with the faculty. And we can see from this statement here taken by the external evaluator is that they were worried about coming to work with us, worried about what we were going to do, that we were going to tell them what to do, but we're not telling them what to do, right? We're working together. We are thought partners in this. We're accomplishing it. And that's what this person said. And this next two talked about the fact that they're just excited for the whole project. So we've got that energy there, and it continued right through COVID. And the key is faculty want students to do better, and they will do what it takes for it to happen. And as for the other research questions that are out there, right? We're collecting data, lots of data, because that's what you're going to believe. Someone else will have to look at the data and convince them, because anecdotes don't work. So we want to collect a lot of this. What we learned in the end from all of this is we can work together as institutions, but we need common visions, goals, common ground. We need an understanding of each other. We need to develop trust, right? We're not different. We have faculty dedicated, trained in the same backgrounds and institutions, same goals and desires, right? Committed to what we want to do. We need to make sure we get rid of this institutional individual bias to what we causing problems. And we need a mindset, an open mindset. The data sharing is so important, and there's no one to blame. But the challenge is how do you keep it going? Leadership must be willing to support it. Faculty need to interact. That's the key. They need to know each other. What is the other teaching? What are we teaching? How can we teach it? How can we smooth the transition between one institution and another? And the cultural differences that exist are not to be used to keep us apart, but to use to bring us together. And so the professional development is each institution has all this different expertise. Can we share that expertise to develop our faculty so they sit in the same room and each institution contributes to the success of the faculty that are in that room from the different institutions? The team, it's huge, right? We bring more and more people in. Each institution is developed in its own way, expanding this into their whole program going forward. There's many, many people here to thank you, the different PIs and everything. And this is growing all the time. And then you'll get into the breakout rooms, and the questions that I have and will have for you is, in your institutions, what are the policies, procedures, practices that keep 2 and 4 institutions from collaborating at the level of being a community where there's a transparent pathway for the students to take? You know, do you have data sharing MOUs? Because it really outweighs the concern, in my opinion. But there's so many fears about sharing data. And then in the end, we think of this professional development as one pathway for 2 and 4 year students to have a permanent, sustainable relationship for the benefit of their students and their institutions and for themselves. What other mechanisms are out there? And that should get me to a little bit over, but pretty close.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for joining us and sharing your insights and your work. So we're now going to transition into facilitated breakout rooms. Welcome back to the main session, everyone. I'm wondering if we can get our facilitators and presenters to share a quick recap of what their groups talked about. So I'll just go in the order of the breakout rooms. So start with Laurie.
I was still collecting my mental note. Shoot. No, I would just say we had a good turnout in our room, and I think, sorry, I'm mute to start speaking. Can you hear me? Yeah, that's weird. It's telling me to unmute myself, but I will just go with it. So we had a good turnout, and it really just started off with talking about different institutions or organizations that can help to support either specific projects or programs as you're moving into undergraduate research. And so that was really a discussion about the loss of the Curry program, which was one that supported undergraduate research in community colleges in particular. And so that sort of is not a funding opportunity any longer. And so really CUR, right, that Council on Undergraduate Research, is a place where you can have a venue to share your work as an undergraduate researcher. And so making sure that people were aware that that was a place, right, for students to be able to share their experiences in undergraduate research. So again, that's CUR, if that's a new one for anybody. And I would just say, you know, encourage people too. This didn't come up in our session, but I'm all about, depending upon where the student research project is, trying to make sure that your students are getting into other forum as well, right? So if there is a biology meeting that supports undergraduate research, making sure your students are there too, and having access to those interactions as opposed to something that's just about, not just, I don't mean that in a diminutive way, but something that's focused just on undergraduate research, but trying to get that specialization, I think, is really helpful, especially for identifying as a biologist or a mathematician or whatever avenue you're pursuing. We talked a little bit more about the importance of collaborations and also making sure that what you're doing is something that works when you move to a four-year institution. And so again, be that your courses are transferable or that you have a better sense of what's happening with the requirements of those four-year universities. And so that came up sort of at the tail end. We just got cut short. And then some other interesting conversations about the eelgrass work that we do. So that's my brief summary.
Awesome, thanks. Sounds like a great discussion. I'll turn it over to your colleague, Lisa.
Hello. Yeah, so we had a small but mighty group, and we were talking about some of the obstacles to summer programs. And I know, Laurie, we had talked about when we did a survey that the students kind of said that they were interested in summer programs, but then that becomes very difficult because everyone's got a lot going on in their lives, right? And we talked about the importance of collaboration with some of the local institutions and perhaps ways to sort of expand that. We talked about having the right facilitators and also whether or not your college has buy-in from many of the administrators and how important that is to have them on board, and also how difficult it is when you're starting a class, for the first time, or if you're teaching it every other semester. Just as Laurie was saying, trying to get that word out, having the counselors know. Laurie's been great at also contacting many of the local high school counselors and letting them know about the STEM class that she was talking about that we're co-teaching in a week, less than a week, I guess. And so those were some of the points that we touched on.
Awesome, thank you, Lisa. Katie, turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Thanks everybody for participating. We started out talking about the various challenges that come with implementing research in general into already established courses, and the resources that are needed to do that versus building courses and developing courses with research already built into the curriculum, and also those resources and challenges that are associated with doing that. But I was really excited to hear about our participants' institutions structuring it in such a way that it encourages a few different stages of introduction to research, like preparation, actually learning about what a research question actually is, learning how to read a journal article, learning how to approach research from an undergraduate level, which can be very scary, and this process sort of demystifies research. I love that word was used when describing this program. And the next stage being partially participating in research or data collection, and then with finally the last stage being fully involved in a whole research process. I loved hearing about that and hearing how it has kept students more engaged in this whole process and learning in a very thorough way. I was very excited to hear about that. And we also talked about how the stigma about two-year community college experiences are changing, and how maybe it used to be that, you went there because you weren't good enough, right? But now it's so different. And in my personal experience, it was so much better than my four-year experience at a university. And I am happy that that's a shared feeling among the administrators in this program, that community colleges are everything. They are powerful with research and many other things. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Katie. I'll turn it over to Bill.
Well, we had a great time talking. It made me really feel why I like working with community college instructors. Great conversation. The number one that came out is, how do you get those data sharing agreements there? The MOU would be so useful. One of the main things that an ascendant institution is really interested in is, how are their students doing when they send them to another location? Because that'd be good feedback in the process of it. Faculty time and effort is always a challenge, but even when you get a grant and a funded proposal, finding those people is difficult. But we came to the conclusion that if you find people that love what they're doing and what they want to accomplish, they'll somehow find the time for it. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to your colleague, Beatrice.
Hi, our group did not have enough time. We were having a great discussion about people's experiences and questions and thoughts on how to not only build, but to maintain 2- and 4-year collaborations. And some of the ideas, just a few of the ideas that came out were having conversations about the differences in the organizations, not just differences between community colleges and universities, but the differences among the community colleges, and having that conversation right at the beginning. That way, some of the concrete issues that might come up are out there. And also it sets a tone for understanding there will be differences, and those will be worked through. Another idea that came up was who initiates and how are these collaborations initiated? Are they initiated by faculty who want to accomplish something? Are they initiated by administrators? And what does that mean for buy-in for the people, usually the faculty, who are doing the work? And finally, which I think sounds like Bill's group discussed as well, we discussed the importance of the data MOU and developing a data sharing agreement that is effective. So that's the couple points from our group.
Great. Thank you so much. And finally, I'll turn it over to Kathleen.
So we started by talking about transfer credits and how some four-year institutions would accept certain courses as transfer credits and others would not. And basically the role of accreditation in engineering and in chemistry in terms of whether they accept transfer credits from community college courses, and the variety of interactions that there are between community colleges and four-year institutions in terms of articulation agreements, that it's sort of all over the place. We talked about data sharing, and we thought maybe privacy concerns were important, but that overall data sharing outweighed the privacy concerns if we, of course, could get it through. And finally, in terms of maintaining scholarly communities, I thought we had some great ideas in terms of establishing research communities between 2- and 4-year institutions. I thought that was a phenomenal idea. Somebody mentioned a pub lore, meaning going to a bar and inviting K through 12, 2-year institution, 4-year institution faculties and talking about research to develop a community of people who, in a very non-threatening setting and very sort of social setting. And finally, there was this, I thought another fantastic idea was develop a course in which at a community, this was a community college faculty member that suggested developing a course at a community college and having faculty from 4-year institutions go and teach some segment of that course. So a course that is co-taught between institutions. So I thought that was a phenomenal idea as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those creative ideas. So before we go, I would just like to thank our speakers and our facilitators, the rest of the AAAS IU's team, and all of you who are able to join and participate in today's workshop. We do have a post-event survey link, which we are posting in the chat and sending via email. And it should only take a few minutes. We really value your feedback so we can continue making these workshops and webinars useful for you. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And as always, we look forward to engaging with and learning from you, the AAAS IU's community. Thanks, everyone.